So we had a full day of conversation around health data in different aspects of the health data. And we've been taking some questions from the audience. What I think that we actually didn't do well is taking the questions from the audience, which is online. So for that, and not only for that, for us as well, we've created Slido. I hope that you in the room made the picture. If you didn't, you can log into the Zoom link and still have the picture. If you don't want to log in, so there is actually a QR code, but it was here. It only stays on this screen now. So you will have to stand up and make the picture of the QR code. What it would let us do with the Slido application. We have the survey, and the survey asks you several questions about health data. And what are you willing to do? What are you ready to do? Do you have trust in sharing your data? Do you think that it's worthy of sharing data? So there have been just 3 simple questions that we asked there. And now the question is that we've been hoping that during the day, your opinion might have been changing. And also during the panel discussion, we will be trying to change the way how you look, because I see the results now, so you can't see the results yet, but we can see, or at least I can see some of the results of your responses. So please do keep, if you voted, but then after we talk and we see things, you see things changing, please do revote, because this is extremely important for us to actually understand if we as a panel do make difference here. And to be honest, I actually surprised that you stay here, because we've been all, please welcome on the stage. So it's not like you need to be waiting. So I won't be doing the reintroduction, because you've seen all of the speakers already and you've heard about all of their titles, and no one can do introductions better than Georgi, so I'm not going to redo that thing. But what I would like to still do is just because we've tried to get here around the tables, different opinions in different countries represented, and different lines of businesses or in sectors of economy. So what I would like just to remind, and I'll start, just as we go, like Rajendra represents, he sits on a number of different UN initiatives. He worked a lot and keeps working on the Indian policy making. So he brings that experience with him. Georg brings a lot of experience around and represents the state in some shape or form, represents Bavaria in full capacity. So he will be giving some of the perspectives and examples of what actually we do on the state level to support different health data initiatives. Pillar brings a lot of industry perspective, expertise of bringing and helping companies to enter markets, especially highly regulated market like health data. Birgit is bringing patient perspective. That's probably nothing more to say to that. And finally, Deepak sits on a number of different European initiatives. He was one of the person who actually supported European Commission in launching EHDS initiatives. So he's seeing the whole Europe, how Europe is trying to organize itself around health data and what challenges that brings to us. So with that, probably we'll start. And I would like to start and focus our discussion on the 2 aspects. So one aspect is equity and privacy, and another is confidence and trust. So we kind of split this into the 2 parts, if you will. And I would like to start with sort of asking Deepak from you, maybe, with what you've seen the Commission is trying to achieve. The Commission put a lot of efforts, and they're trying, like I was saying, they're trying to organize ourselves around this. So how do you think they are advancing or achieving, and what do they do right or wrong in terms of establishing the rules for all of us? What more they can do, probably, perhaps, from your perspective? So how we stand on this kind of diverse ecosystem like European Union, how we stand to try to organize that whole thing?
I think and I think you want me to focus on the equity issue especially. So I think I need to start by saying that it's an area of great concern for me. We know already that there is a digital and data divide in the big databases, the big data sets that exist. So, for example, people in wealthier parts of a country may also have better resourced hospitals with better EHR systems, which means that the data is of better quality and more reusable and more available for research. People in underserved environments may have less resourced hospitals, less sophisticated EHRs, less high quality data. What it means is that people who are in usually lower economic groups, people of other, maybe less majority ethnicities, may be underrepresented in the data that is easier to get. By easier to get, I mean an innovator who wants a nice, shiny data set goes to where it's nice and shiny. And that means that the innovations, the inventions, the drugs, the algorithms may not be optimized for everybody in Europe or even globally. And I really am concerned that when we start to get issues of trust, and for example, the Commission is currently, and Europe is currently wondering, should we offer an opt-out of the European health data space for secondary use? Opt-out is a very familiar term in Germany, I know. This is a big name for you. But if we have opt-out, how do we inform the public about what the choice is, what the implications of the choice is, and therefore how to opt out if they have a good reason? My anxiety is we're not resourcing digital literacy, data literacy. We will risk offering an opt-out where people will make knee-jerk panic reactions, and we will amplify the digital divide. We will make it even worse than it is today. So we need that issue of trust to be so strong that even if an opt-out is offered, hardly anybody feels motivated to opt out. Let your data count. Let your data influence the next generation of algorithms so they work for you. That's the message we have to promote.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deepak. And I think that also connects to sort of like my next question. So if we go and, break European Union a little in piece, and we focus on Germany as we are in Germany, and we have representative of Germany. So, and we focus also on something which is kind of Germany is familiar with, is, patient privacy. Hope everyone is alive. So as we know, patient privacy is kind of a main concern, and but still we'd like to have patients participating. So what, from the German perspective and from your perspective, the patient representative, so how do you see we can actually help that community to be part, to contribute, still overcoming, those challenges, those barriers, probably the historical and cultural barriers. So what we could do better in that sense to help those voices be heard?
I would say at first we need more information to the people. We need to educate them, and we have to grow the digital health and data literacy. Because when you have something and you don't know how to use it, you will not use it. And we are running in a very, I would say, in a very big danger to waste a lot of money, to waste a lot of other resources without bringing the people onto the boat. And this is, so I would say the boarding process is a very important thing at the moment. And this comes from information, and also telling them, as Deepak said, not be panicked to do the opt-out as the last possible solution to protect yourself. Tell them the opt-out is maybe the red button, but not a possible solution, especially when it comes to health data sharing. And we have to explain what does it mean to share health data? What is behind? And I know that from my experience, one year data saves lives, and we have seen when we start to explain very, very simple. So as we say in Germany, with apples and pears, then we can make it. And then people start to rethink their own thinking. They start to rethink the whole process. And then you can manage that. And then you can go out and say, okay, maybe you have an opt-out. This is an alternative just for the case, but it's not the usual process you should do. And then you have it on board. It's working, but it's a challenge. It needs a lot of resources. I know that. It needs also a lot of sometimes passion and patience, and sometimes lots of chocolate for the nerves, for my nerves.
There was something mentioned, Birgit, you mentioned in your talk early in the morning today, and we've had actually kind of a little debate here about, the patient involvement that as a topic on its own kind of sparks some different opinions here. Like, can we access directly patients? Can we not access the patients directly? There are some patients which are more aware and they actually would proactively like to do something. Some, they are not even patients probably for now, right? Just citizens. So they would have more restriction and more, or I'll say less interest in participating. So how would you see those different communities within the patient community or citizen community? Because we don't want, do we, to have the disbalance, like only the chronic disease patients being active and 95% of other population less active, right? So how do you see that kind of, do we have means to balance that as well? Some incentives or means for the other part of the population to believe in this thing somehow?
Yeah, so I think we have to make a difference between those short-term patients. You have an accident, or sometimes you have some pain in your back, you're a patient for 2 days. So that's it. Then we have those long-term disease patients, maybe with oncology, disease, cancer, but they can be cured. We have a lot of cancer outside we can cure today because of the therapy options. And then we have those people like me. There is no cure for MS. I have to live with it every single day. And I think we have to make a difference between, and we have also in the citizenship, we have the family members, we have the caring persons. Maybe they are not sick, but they live also with a disease because they have a patient in their family and they have to take care for those people too. So we can take care of them also. That means also to bring a bigger group to the whole process. And I guess, yes, not everyone will be interested. And I'm far away from saying I want to convince people to do this. This is not my mission. My mission is to give them another opinion and to maybe change their thinking a little bit, give them also the benefits. But we have to do a public debate. We need this public discussion, not just in the patient communities. And by the way, there are so many patient experts outside. They are independent. They are open-minded. They are open their doors to every stakeholder what we have here. So, and also when we are talking about, oh, this pharma compliance, no, they find a way how to contact them. There are opportunities. I know that from myself. I'm independent too. So I know how to reach out to people. And I think that's the important point. They find ways, but we have to open doors on both sides, and then we can do this. And we can have this public discussion. I would love to do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Birgit. So if we still stay within the German realm, so how do you see, Georg, this happening within, how do you see that from the state perspective? So what the state is doing in terms of supporting those different stakeholders, and especially, on those sensitive topics, like we want some, create the ecosystem, the growth ecosystem, startup ecosystem. We want to let pharma and industry participate. So what is that the safeguards and the approach that either Bavaria or Germany is taking to actually try to give the tools, still keeping, all those things like privacy and equity under some sort of a control? So maybe you've got some real life examples on that. How do you do this here in Germany?
Yeah, let me start with one point that is very important to me, and that is the European health data space is something very good. If we achieve to have a European health data space, a common data space for health data within Europe, with all of the 27 member states included, that is something we really should go for. So it's a very positive thing, and we should put all our efforts in it that it actually will work out, because it's a big chance. And if also it's too big to fail, I think. If we do not succeed, we won't be able to do something like this for the next 20 years, because everybody will be like, oh my God, we didn't manage it, and we just keep our fingers away from it. So that really shouldn't happen. Is the digital divide a problem? Yes, definitely. Do we have to approach it? Yes, definitely. And I think actually when we look at other member states of the EU that are a bit farther ahead of us, like for example, Denmark, they do have solutions on how to approach the people. They had a huge public campaign. They were discussing the introduction of electronic health records with the population. They were explaining them why they do it and what the good reasons are for it. Denmark, by the way, interesting enough, they went a bit too far because they are 100% digitalized now, and they have to step back because they realized they left out 10% of the population. So they are redesigning their laws because they went too far. So yes, that's a learning process, but so we have to go on the regulatory level, which we try to do with the legislative proposals that we have on the table right now. When you look at the Digitalgesetz, the Digital Act, and also the Gesundheitsdatennutzungsgesetz, the Use of Health Data Act. So we need to have the right regulatory frame, but that's not enough, obviously. We need to make sure that it's not only the legal frame, it's not only the technique that is there, but we need a public campaign. We need to actually roll it out and go along with it. And my big hope was that, most of you will know the digital strategy of the Federal Ministry of Health. It's a good thing, and they talk a lot about communication in there, but we missed the follow-up. And that's one thing that we are demanding right now from Bavaria, because we are saying we need to have everybody on one table, all the different actors. We need the companies, the industry, we need the research, we need the caretakers, we need the governments, we need everybody, and everybody looks each other in the eye and says, okay, we agree on this, and that is how we will approach it together for the good of all the people. And if that doesn't happen on the federal level, we will try to do it in Bavaria. We are actually working on a model project right now, or pilot project that is based in Bavaria for the telematic infrastructure, so for the digital highway between the different actors of the health system. And we think that that's only a first step. We have to have a public campaign. We have to take the people along and explain to them what's happening. And that will be the second step of the project we're just working on, because it's so important to communicate.
And you also mentioned industry. So, for example, what I can see from the Bavarian perspective, Siemens Healthineers have the main presence here. So, do you somehow try to, because we know that they create the hubs, they create the ecosystem, they probably are hungry for data as well, right? Yes. They're probably making requests, and you probably address those requests somehow. So how do you see that kind of communication happening over here?
Yeah, we've had a mindset change in Germany in the last 2 or 3 years, I would say. 5 years ago, nobody would talk about the use of health data for the health industry. Everybody would like, no. That's absolutely forbidden. And they were always talking about data protection issues. Now that the discussion has changed, fortunately, that's very important, because during COVID, we saw where the innovation comes from. It's the companies, it's the startups that were innovative, that helped us overcome the pandemic. So we are discussing it in a different way now. The legislative proposals that are being discussed, or that are in the process already, will give the companies the chance to actually use the health data that is compiled on the federal level. And we are trying to do the same with a Bavarian cloud that we are just about to set up. And that will also have an access point for companies as well as for researchers, of course.
Okay, thank you. So if we now move over to, and we kind of go beyond the European realm. So Rajendra, how do you see, countries, so-called high potential, high growth countries for today? So they usually kind of prefer innovation, let's say, over equities or privacies. That's kind of the stereotype that we've got. Do you see this kind of thing indeed happening, that innovation is an investment and commercializations, they are bringing them forward, and the things related to safeguards and privacy and equity, they stay behind, or those things are also changing, and there is some balance that they are trying to strike today over those kind of developing economies and growing economies?
Thank you. So, Dimitri, I was sipping my coffee and listening everyone. I think you started rightly with Deepak. You know, this entire focus on data and privacy came thanks to GDPR. It was so strict and rigid. Every government, every organization within their countries have started questioning, if Europe can do GDPR, what the hell are we doing? So I think first, that being the starting point, let me give you the other side. That I have always believed that data science is medical science and the other way around. So you cannot have medical science besides without data. Everything is today data. But has it percolated down in every country? Not at all. So let's look at countries. So if you really look at developed countries and the upper middle income countries, for them data is a priority. Ask us if it is LMICs, no, primary care is still a priority. They're still not able to deliver primary care. But they do realize the importance of technology. Data is still low in the value chain for them. They don't understand the value because you don't have leaders like Deepak, who could actually sensitize them, or there are, like who could throw studies to them how data impacts, or like, what we heard, that data saves lives. So I think we still need to bring the spotlight on data. Let me confess that for the lower middle income countries and the least developed countries, data is still not the priority. Even you wouldn't find this reference in their policies if they so have. Digital health, thanks to WHO and others, has gotten, but data is still lower in the value for them. So I think there needs to be a standardization, and a lot of evidence around why you need to invest in data, how much. But the other challenge that we face is now the loss of data, which happened recently in India with 810 million data loss. So how would you ensure that these countries should jump the data wagon and still be not losing an election because they lost the data of 810 million people? So I think balance, no way. Data importance, not at all for those countries. So I think it's a typical challenge. And let me put you the other divide, the digital divide. So within the UN system where I work in IGF, out of 8 billion people, 2.6 billion have no access to internet. So the digital divide is bigger than the physical divide. So we need to address multiple divides before we get to the base of data.
Thank you, Rajendra. So if we then kind of look at these diverse markets, diverse ecosystems. So I like, address this to you pillars. It's like, we've got so many different places, and like Rajendra just explained, we are quite different from what we do here in Europe. Probably there's a lot other different things happening and being priority for other markets. So, and the data protection regulation, privacy, equity, so that is really different. So from that perspective, so when you advise, companies for, access to market, how do you explain them? Because like probably we had one conversation earlier on today, is that they need to choose, right? They need to go somewhere there where they actually can profit quicker, prove quicker, have access, and probably that may mean that they need access to data. So how do you take that? Would you say, for example, would you advise against going into Europe because we've got such a rigid regulation here? So what would be your take on that?
My take is to ask them the question so that they decide, knowing what is there. I mean, I'm going to be a bit binary here, but the www is gone. We have the splinternet technically. Yes, we have countries that are technocracies, meaning the technology companies think they should be the sheriff of the data and the custodians. We have states that they think they should be the sovereign custodians of data. For instance, like in Abu Dhabi, where I now live, you have a sovereign cloud, yes? And then you have a European Union that is more citizen-centric, yeah? So, and then is the cloud providers above us. So I say that it is critical to decide on a multi-location strategy and then look at how the data flows will be accessible, managed, and and take the right decisions, because you might be infringing law without knowing. Because again, we know people are very good at putting boundaries, but data is not so good at that. So it has to be very well thought out. You have to choose your technology partners very well, because I've seen companies going with a specific cloud provider into a country where they're not supposed to operate. And that's a problem. So yes, follow the data flows and then decide where you want to operate. You saw the first slide with the waves. You have to follow regulation. It is probably regulation is the biggest force at the moment to decide your market access.
Thank you, Pilar. So let me just make a pause here. So, and I'm trying to see the results, and I'm trying to see if I can project the results over here. Well, it's only me having an exclusive access to the results over here. But let me voice some of those. So we're still, like I was looking at the slide in the morning. So, and probably for those who didn't even read the questions, so I'll read out the questions. So we've asked 3 questions. How advanced is the use of patient or citizen health data in developing new treatments and preventive strategies today? That was the question. So basically, how well we use the data, how well we prepare to use the data. The other question was, is the professional community making appropriate efforts to educate policymakers and society about the benefits and risks of health technology? So is basically the question, how you actually look at us, how you perceive our job. And then the third question was, would you more or less be ready to give access, grant your data? Would you be ready to share your data? And that was the same in the morning, same as now. We are staying somewhere in the middle. So basically we are doing average on every question. So we are moderately advanced in using data. So we don't have that kind of inspiration, so to say, going on here, right? So we probably still need a lot of work to do, because that's other questions are kind of correlated in that sense. So we've got, we as professional community also doing, how is that phrased here? Somewhat, right? Somewhat, but there is room for improvement for us to advance or achieve more. And yeah, in terms of sharing data, it's kind of maybe. The answer is maybe. So people are not still sure if they're ready to do that. And I don't know, maybe if any one of you want to reflect now, and I actually encourage to revote if you'd like to revote, because I'd like to see if things somehow change, if we give the panel to address those. Please go ahead, Deggendorf.
So firstly, data is not just data. Let's understand that. I think data is your identity. Data is your diagnosis. Data is medicine, and data is treatment. And I can actually qualify that because I wrote an article some few years back on this same heading. If you look up, data is identity. So who you are is your unique health ID, which is a number. That's your identity. Now, data as diagnosis, the moment you start using artificial intelligence on a heaps of data, you start getting the diagnosis. So that's data. Now, when you look at data as a treatment, so in the morning, I think we did have Stefan talking about DTX. That is data. Softwares work, use AI on data. So that's also treatment. Now, how does this get into a treatment? So 2018, ICD-11 said gaming was a disorder. This is WHO. 2020, US FDA said gaming can be used for treating ADHD. Data is again used for treatment. So data is not data. Let's remove the cloud over data. It's your identity. It's your diagnosis. It's a medicine, because software is a drug. You can look up that. Software is a drug reimbursed. And software is a treatment too, which is again backed by data. So let's understand data for different dimensions.
Anyone else want to respond to the current state of being average on, on us, on trust? No? Otherwise, go ahead. Please, Deepak.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to say to some of you who voted yes or somewhat, I disagree with you completely. We are not using data enough, and we are not hammering decision makers with the benefits as well as the risks. They know all about the risks. They can read about them in the newspapers, but not the benefits. So you in the audience, join us. We have got to accelerate the use of data, improve care, accelerate innovations, and tell decision makers all about it, because they still don't get it. No offense to that decision maker, because he does get it. But in general, right across Europe, probably the planet, get on with it. No complacency allowed.
Yeah, I see, Georg, you want to...
You're welcome to disagree.
I actually wanted to stress another point, and that is, yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it makes me think actually that why are you not convinced that you would share your data to the greater good, so to say? We really have to convince you, and that's something that doesn't happen in one afternoon, of course, that's for sure. So we need more time for that. But in my opinion, and I'm not a scientist, but in my opinion, it's so important to, start collecting the data now so that you have a bigger data set later. You have to start while you're healthy and not wait until you're sick. And that is why we really have to convince you, and that's, now I come back to the discussion about the opt-in, opt-out. If we go towards the opt-out principle, which will probably happen on the European level as well as it happens on the German level right now, we really have to convince the people that it's very important to share their data. So please, share your data. We will have to think about how to, that's for sure, we will have to think about how to convince the people, how to talk more about the good of what it can do. That's probably not the job of the decision makers, but they have to be convinced as well, that's for sure. And again, I'm always saying it's a combined effort, because you have the industry who can explain to you why it's good to use the data, you have the scientists, and then you have the policymaker. It has to be a combined effort.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Georg. And Birgit, please give your perspective.
No, it's not a perspective, but I would be interested, and I would add 2 questions, because you're asking very broad. So I would love to know who from you is informed about health data sharing and how to do it, and what do you know about it? And also the second question is, are you aware or informed about the benefits of health data sharing, what you can do with your data? And I think then we have another thing, but because it's a conscious decision.
They can raise their hand.
Yeah.
Do you remember your hand?
How
those
are you?
those
So
online,
are you?
Hands are the things you used before you used
so
your
those
fingers.
in the audience,
Oh, we have
you could raise
informed
the hand
person.
and we can be interactive here. Those online, you can use Q&A sessions, Q&A parts in Slido. So I'm reading what you type in the Q&A. So you can disagree or agree. You can express your opinion about our points of view.
Yeah, so I would love to see that. How informed are you about health data sharing? Yes, I'm informed. I want to see your hands. Oh. Who feels not
Do
informed
you feel
enough?
well informed enough to be able to make decisions about using your data?
Yeah, we have a new hand. Maybe 1.5. Ha! I see that. Yeah, that's one here. Yeah, so me too. So
But
okay.
I tell you, I'm looking at the results of the survey, and actually, there is a lot of expectation towards the professional community like us. So actually, we don't do enough, and I think that I see it here from here. So there's a lot of room for improvement. That's the response.
Yeah, this
About
is
the
what I'm
professional community.
saying.
This is something that probably we need to do more somehow in terms of making them or us as well, because them and us, like, there is no divide here. We are
No.
on the both sides, aren't
Yeah.
we?
But I want to know, who is informed about the benefits of health data sharing? Who has an idea? What could you do? So think about it. What could you do with your data for other people? Okay, this is more. You make me happy now. You made my day before I start to be a little bit depressed. But this is important. And this shows us exactly what we also found out in your analyze. We need more information. I know I'm sounding like a priest, but it's so important. Sorry.
Pilar, I'll add to that. This is a specialized community of people in digital health, and there is a challenge. We have a serious challenge in Deepak. if those in digital health have so few takers, we have a real big challenge. And Deepak, we look up to you to solve this crisis. Together we will.
I think the team effort is the spirit I like.
Yeah, and we can't make one person responsible, right? So let's
So
share.
you
let's
become the
share.
ambassadors now officially.
All right. So I'll see you later. So in the end, like
Can
we've
I
got.
add one little
you go
thought
ahead,
on
please
that?
go ahead,
I'm
please.
going to be a bit provocative. I think, assuming, that looking at even, the discussions that goes around vaccinations now, I'm not very positive on how many people will not opt out, because especially the younger generations, funny enough. And my concern is that if it's not population-wide, we will be discriminating by default at algorithmic level a lot of people. So I wonder, from a population health perspective, I see it as a duty to share data rather than as a right. And I know that will probably put some feathers here and there but the thing is, we don't argue vaccines. Why do we argue drugs that will be developed on our algorithm when it will exclude a lot of you?
Pilar, I mean, it's interesting because other people have been raising this issue. We get a bit fixated with our right to privacy, but we actually have a right to healthcare. And healthcare doesn't mean boring, old-fashioned, rubbish healthcare. It means the best possible healthcare we can have. And that's another human right, international human right. And how do we balance those is a more complicated question. Let's go to the UN.
Deepak, I'll put that. So in 2012, I drafted the patient charter. But the patient charter was not just about right, it was about duties. So if you want right to healthcare, the duty about sharing data is also important. So you cannot have right to healthcare without the duty to share data, right? That's the way it should be.
I lost the track. It's a very liberal thing, but that's the thing what really bothers me a lot. I'm from Europe, right? I'm now living in Abu Dhabi, but we will be anyway consuming the solutions that other countries are going to be doing, and it's not going to be based on our data. That's the reality. We will import those. So it's not a question of whether or not, it's a question of who do you want to be driving that. And this is the question that every country has to also consider, because again, there is a lot of populations excluding from mapping at the moment in genomics, as we saw in the chart. The mixed population in Latin, Pakistan, Africa, 3,000 groups recognized. So we need to see this as a sort of, because before, at the moment, access to health is economic mostly, yeah? But the drugs, the way they're being built, it will be at algorithmic level. That's a problem.
And I think that this is, and probably I see that, Deepak and Georg, you have something, and I think that actually this discussion connects pretty well into, our other part of the discussion, which relates to gaining trust. And I think that actually we are really jumping very well here. And probably, Pilar, even with you, maybe I would ask you something like, maybe you have some takeaways and something that you can actually advise to the entrepreneurs who are starting up now. And as we know, and as we discussed a lot already during today, that data, health data, is at the core of most of the health technology. So everyone who is trying to build up something, they will be dependent. They will be dependent on data, they will be dependent on legislation. So what is that you would say, and we take industry here first, and then we go back to policymaking and professional community. What would be your advice to the industry actually to kind of build that trust? Because trust probably is something which is very difficult to build and very easy to destroy. So what would be your kind of advice to this group and to the audience is like what they have to think about?
Well, I think I'll go to the core. I mean, you have to have a label, like you buy an ingredient soup. It has to be, I need to know where it comes from, transparent source. The thing is, like the industry is also guilty because sometimes they don't even know how that works or if it works. But it has to be inclusive of everybody that this is meant to be for, and it's not being the case. So I struggle a lot with that, and sometimes I challenge some companies because I don't want them to market something that is not really impactful. And the thing is the metadata. I mean, are you inclusive? Are you buying the data sets in America, which is based in 3 cities anyway, just to train the thing there, just to launch something? But what for? It's waste. And waste of lives as well. So that's my point.
Yeah. And I don't know if Rajendra, if you would like to pick up here, because we had a very interesting conversation somewhere at the lunchtime. How do you see, like, especially from your work, you know, with the intergovernmental organizations and a lot of push, a lot of support that UN, WHO, European Commission trying to put there out. But what we see here from the European perspective, we don't have much of the presence of industry at large, right? So industry is not really part, they are kind of recognized, but usually they're recognized for not playing fair, if you will. And we say it's probably a stereotype, right? I think that some may not, some may. So how do you see from, you know, top-down approach, from the UN perspective, WHO perspective, can we do something making them part of the conversation, part of the dialogue? Can we create some kind of a framework within which we can actually trust each other?
So it's a very interesting but a very complicated question. So all multilateral bodies are funded by the governments. So essentially, they should be working with the governments and following the agenda that come as a request in the General Assembly or their annual meeting. But what is happening is very interesting to watch and those who analyze. So all the big tech companies, they have a fantastic PR machinery. So let's take an example of Facebook. They changed the name to Meta. The world started talking of metaverse. Look at how Microsoft did 2 decades back, started with cloud. The world started moving to cloud. So I said that recently in October, I was in the Kyoto meeting of Internet Governance Forum, that is a specialized body of the UN working on internet issues, that do not make these platforms as narrative setting platforms or that big tech. Essentially what's happening when you see their high level panels, all these big tech guys sitting there and making a pitch. Now, my worry here is when 2.6 billion people are not connected on the internet, the UN Secretary General sets up a high level panel on AI, not a high level panel for connecting the 2.6 billion people. So I think there are misplaced priorities of those multilateral bodies, and you won't get to make this point because a high level panel doesn't have those representatives of patients or populations. Look at who it is, the Japanese Prime Minister, NVIDIA, Meta, Microsoft, Google. So do you think you get the real agendas out there? So I think to some extent they follow the agenda and the narrative set by big tech. And at the end, it's government, but they also have the, I was involved in the guidelines development group. So either it is evidence that generates their guidelines or low evidence, but no evidence will not generate anything. How on new technologies can you have high evidence? I mean, Deepak will be the best person to look at that, but there isn't much evidence on emerging technologies. So I think for UN bodies, if you're expecting them to do all the work, I think you are on the wrong target. I think it's mostly to organizations like the one Brigade Trans, which is patient driven, because you're actually ground up movement. The patients union where you get millions of patients talking about what they need. So I think with multilateral bodies, they can just at max be a platform where those big techs will set a narrative, but the real issues will never come forth. Let me tell you that that's been an experience for years. I've been very vocal about it, but sad to say that don't expect much there.
No, thank you. And so if we look, for example, if you look at Germany, what Germany is doing now, we see, at least from the outside, there is a lot of investment, there is a lot of government interest for now. For those couple of years, we see a lot of attention from the government. We see, for example, and you could expand on that a little. It's like, I know that you are chairing the advisory board of Gematik, so Gematik got a new mandate, right? So there's also what's happening here. The Minister of Digitalization takes over the Ministry of Health in Bavaria. So there's a lot of interest of the government top down. So do you see that, and I understand that probably might be a little kind of bias for you to respond to that, but how do you see that helps that trust, gaining that trust? Do you see that historical kind of inertia in Germany is changing? Are we able to change to kind of stir the ship a little towards, more openness, more data sharing, kind of understanding that the public good are those topics which we need to actually address and kind of gain and grow, kind of empower all of us, if you will? I know that some of us don't like the word empower here, but still, do you see that the top-down approach is changing the ecosystem?
Well, let's put it like this. I think we need both. We need a top-down approach and we need a bottom-up approach at the same time. And if it falls together, we can really move things. Do I think the decision-making is going in the right direction at the moment? Yeah, of course, I have to say yes. But I'm always thinking of it as a 80-20, I would say. I'd say 80% are going in the right direction. You always have to see where we're in Germany, where we're coming from. As I said before, 5 years ago, nobody was even talking about the use of health data. It was like a no-go, don't discuss it kind of thing. And now we are in the middle of the discussion as we are here on the panel. So we are on the right track. That is very important for me. Can we make it better still? Yes, of course. Are we just at the beginning? Yes, of course. But I think with the legislation that we have in place, with the restructuring of the Gematik, yes, that's the right thing to do. And it should also help us to build more trust of the people in the system we are building up. Because, I mean, if you compare it to an open market system, it is a quite secure system we are building up. We need to fulfill the data protection regulation or the way it's implemented in Germany, which is even more stricter than it is in other countries. That's part of the problem, by the way, but okay. But we have it in place and we will fulfill all of these obligations. So I think, yes, that's the right way to build more trust. Yeah.
And so Birgit, if you could kind of build a little on top or maybe kind of support what Georg is saying here. So how you see that from that, you know, one major stakeholder, which is us, as patients and citizens. So, and we touched a little bit already on that, because I'm kind of personally concerned is that we usually, when we say patients, usually we see those with comorbidities, with complex diseases. So we discuss that. Those people are involved, are highly aware. But there is this generic population, if you will, which probably, if we do explain them, they may support us. But the question is probably, it's even challenging to kind of get the attention. So how we can make them actually aware? Do you see how we can approach them? That kind of, a lot of people out there who don't bother, if you will. So how can we address them?
I would say, and this is, I would say, a mission for journalists. When it comes to digitalization and also health data sharing, and the journalists start to report, it's on page 4, maybe 20 lines with a short dramatic headline. Hey, this is really trustworthy to say it in that way. And people don't see it because it's on the left corner, in the middle, on the bottom. So we need more press work, positive press work. We also have to engage with the journalism and also to say them, please avoid those dramatic panic, oh my God, this data things are correct headlines. Because this is just fishing for compliments in a sensational way. And this is not what we need. We need a proper discussion. And I think journalists should report neutral and with backgrounds. Also, I see the healthcare providers, insurances. We have a law in Germany. They have a duty to inform their insurance people. Do they? No. I missed that, to be honest. They sent me sometimes a letter saying, oh, there is something going on, but they don't explain it. The facts are missed, the details are missed. And also we need maybe something what we had in the Corona phase from the, I don't know the English word, BZGA. It was promotion about using the vaccination offers to go to the testing centers to do the vaccinations. It was 5 minutes before 8 in prime time. Why don't we have it now? So we're still in a pandemic, yes, but we have also another crisis. This is the health data crisis. And I think we should take that more serious. It should be shown in the advertisement in a prime time. Why not? Also, we are there, and I'm not talking just about patients, I talk about citizens, because I'm married with a citizen too. So and this is what we need. We need a very broad, very, I would say, different strategy to communicate from different stakeholders, also from the government. So government, talking about Berlin, the Ministry of Health was not really able to talk about that. We are the only initiative talking about health data. Hey, this is not going. So we need a very broad strategy to set it up. And also, this strategy must be built up by interested stakeholders from different groups, including patients, citizens, or different ages, different maybe also educational background. You can do that with surveys. Ask them, ask the people what they need. So we are talking about trust, but bring them the trust now. Trust them that they say their opinion. And if you give trust, they will give you something back. And I think this is also what we need. We should not expect just trust with giving not something. This is not possible.
And so if we go sort of like to a multi-regional thing here, do you, Deepak, see, and you, to some extent, you represent the professional community here, you participate in a number of European funded projects, and you supported the European Commission in those all endeavors around European health data space. And we've seen, for example, when France had their presidency, they came up as the result of their presidency, they came up with ethical principles. So do you think that actually we can come up with some generic principles that would apply across the whole European Union? We've got so many member states, so many different cultural representations. Do you think it's even worthy from the European Union perspective to engage in this type of principles, giving principles, trying to gain trust, or is it still the local responsibilities? So how do you see that kind of professional community being part of that whole thing?
Well, that's really interesting. I actually would like to make three small points. Only the third one is a direct answer to your question. The first point I'd like to make is that I think this audience generally looks too healthy. What I mean by that is that when we talk about patients, you're thinking of other people. You don't think about yourselves because you look just too healthy. You shouldn't look this good, really. I'd like you to think that diseases I don't have. So my data is relevant not only to the diseases I have, but all the ones I don't have. And you might not have 99 diseases you don't have. Maybe there's 100 diseases you don't have because you don't have my one. But you're relevant. You know, I have a family history of diabetes, but I don't have diabetes yet. Why not? The control groups are important too. So none of you are out of the loop here. You can't just sit here relaxed saying, I'm a young, healthy person, this doesn't bother me. Your data counts. So that's the first point. Second point is, we must be careful not to bash decision makers and policy makers. The ones I actually meet are almost 100%. I don't meet the British politicians, by the way, so I'm not going to tell you that they are nice people, but the ones that I do meet at a European level and in other countries are actually very nice people, but they are not domain experts. That is not their career path. We have an obligation, the bottom-up obligation that Lightberg, our bottom-up obligation is to help foster good practices, articulate our needs, help to co-create with them the good pathways, the good measures, the good codes. Don't feel that they are some distant group that, you know, does squanderous things with public money, because the non-Brexit group don't do that. But I think we do have that obligation, and I honestly believe that if we work together, the needs, the opportunities are not regional and not local. People generally are pretty similar, surprisingly enough, on this topic. And we will not scale up research. We will not scale up learning if we end up with multiple diverse approaches. We have to unify and work together to do it.
And I see Rajendra wants to
Yeah,
complement a little. So just because I want to take a couple of questions from the audience, and we've got a couple of questions
just
online,
a quick comment based on the discussion I had with Dr. Miklos and our friend Dimitri, is that I think it's time for us to draft the FAIR principles on which those big tech engage with the multilateral bodies, with the governments and other state actors, because it's a one-way traffic. and we can't have that. So need to define the fair principles for that. And I think we're going to reach out to a wider community to draft that and to present it to those multilateral bodies to think about it. Thank you.
So we've got probably about 5 minutes left here. So I'd like to take 1 or 2 questions from the room and 1 or 2 questions online. So, but let's start with the room. Anyone in the room wants to? Please, do we have a mic? Because we have quite a couple of questions.
I can give you a mic.
That's been over there. No, on the right. No, on the right to mic. No, on the right.
Hello, I'm Saga Brilliant from Luleå University of Technology in Sweden. First of all, thank you so much for being here. It's really enriching to hear everything that you have to say about your enterprises and your projects that you have going on right now. My question is regarding how you involve the matter of autonomy and empathy in your personal works. It's a question for all of the panelists. Because of the rapid development of AI as we see it now, especially in the healthcare sector, the matter of autonomy and empathy for both the patients and the healthcare workers is of great concern. So how do you personally involve that and make that a priority in your work? Thank you.
Anyone wants to take? Birgit, you want to respond? Yeah. Ah, it's a tough question, huh?
No, if you can little brief, because the question went so long that our data processing after 6 p.m. slowed down. So, you know, if you can be a little brief, happy to answer it for sure.
No,
I got a quick answer. I mean, on semantics. I would only, if I could do something, I would just drop the word user into the dustbin and use beneficiary. Because then the question is, no, are you going to use? No. How are you going to benefit from this? And only that already turned the tables. Let's get rid of users, please. Only drag users use it. So.
All right. So, if you'd like, you can build on top if you'd like, because I don't see other hands raised. So, and I wanted to take 2 questions. So, if you'd like, you could follow up.
All right, here I go again. So first of all, thank you for your response. It's just a topic of interest of mine, especially because I'm a student of health psychology. So a lot of my previous work has been about specifically how we can make sure that we do see the empathy. And especially now I had a very interesting conversation with Lars from AI Sweden previously today about how it is more crucial than ever that we make sure that the empathy that we feel for other people on a humane aspect remains firm. Because right now we are talking about a very quickly developing area, which is soon probably going to take over what we previously knew to be the norm within healthcare. So there is a growing concern for not the users, but perhaps the beneficiaries, both from the working side, but also from the partaking side of patients who might need the healthcare provided to them, that they not only get more of an efficient response, treatment, diagnosis, but also that they don't feel that they're talking to a robot or that the humane aspect of the connection is taken away, but more that they get both sides, that it becomes more efficient. There's more of a streamlined form of healthcare, but we still retain that connection, if that makes it clearer.
I mean, I found it interesting through this conference that the prowess of AI and chat to empathize with people has been highlighted. But my take-home message was actually the opposite message, which is that what we have done over the years, probably with health professional education, is overemphasize trying to cram the younger generation with more and more facts, because there are more and more facts. And I suspect that what is really revealed is that we have not been training health professionals enough in the bedside manner, the old-fashioned bedside manner. Maybe Lars is old enough, like me, to remember the bedside manner and how to communicate, how to explain. So I think that AI is filling a gap, but it's a gap we should never have had. It's a failing of our education of people that we have left, in a way, ourselves vulnerable to a damn computer to be friendlier than us. That's our fault. We shouldn't blame the AI for stealing us, stealing our place. We should blame ourselves for letting our guard down on the important humanistic art of medicine as opposed to the science of medicine. I think it's our own fault.
So I'll add to that on your empathy part. So when the healthcare moves from bedside to website, and when you don't know whom you're talking on the phone line, whether it's a robot or a human being, but it is more empathetic, understands you very well, like what you like, what tone you like, what language you like, what would be a better choice for you? Talking to a physical doctor or talking to a technology back where you cannot differentiate. So I will add to what Deepak said, that as a medical fraternity, we fail to live our expectation. We believe that, we are like next to God, probably God. And our technology is a big leveler. It tells us you're not God. We'll chip in. And I think technology will do one good thing. A lot of doctors will learn how to talk because they know technology is going to do a better job than them. So for us, and since you are a psychologist, if you look at psychometric tools, and when we are talking about sharing your data, if we know your social media usage, how much time you spend on your system, at what speed you type, and at what speed you talk with your phone, I would be much better prepared to handle you as technology than a doctor will ever in life be able to do. So I think the issue of empathy will be better handled by techno-empathy, which will happen over time. Psychology will be actually getting into technology. It is already getting in. I think it will change a lot of things when the healthcare moves from bedside to website, and it's actually moving.
So I've got two questions from online, so because we need to kind of wrap up here, so we're a little over time already. But those are interesting questions, and they actually probably represent the mood in the audience. So one is a very interesting, so I even gonna quote it. So estimating each country has all the data of their population, how you can ensure that the data will be safe and not being used as a biological weapon. So I'd like, because I think that goes very well probably from the kind of state perspective, right? It's a responsibility of the government. So I don't know, Georg, maybe you'll respond to the biological weapon threat type of thing.
Well, yes, of course, that's a concern that many have. You can only be as good as the technique is, right? So we are trying to do everything that's possible to protect the data. On the other hand, I'm a lawyer, so I have a strong belief that you have to have smart regulation in place that actually makes sure that if the data is misused, it's punished, and punished heavily. And that's probably more effective than trying to protect it on a technical level. So we have to try both. Will it be 100%? No, it won't be. You have to be honest about it as well. But that's always been the case. We've always used data in medicine. And of course, now the pile of data is bigger than it used to be, that's for sure. But we've always worked with data in the healthcare system, and it was always a danger. If it's a terrorist attack, you probably cannot change it anyway because you can't be prepared normally, because the attack will come very sudden. And yeah, that's my approach.
And probably I'll, I know that Birgit wants to chip in on that one too, from the biological weapon thing. But before you take that, I also give you another question. So I think it actually goes very well into what and how we feel as citizens and patients. So I'm also gonna read this out. So how are you going to get people to share their health data with large enterprises when many of them patients, I believe, are superstitious and won't even speak the word cancer out loud for the fear of speaking it to get the disease, as well as they won't be able, or they won't like to even admit to the family members that they're losing memory, for instance. So like, I guess that the point here being is that even us, we have so many, let's say culturally, so many superstitions that this is what we are probably dealing with in that sense. So how can we talk about, let's say, the most sophisticated things as data protection and data sharing if we still didn't overcome our kind of deeply rooted superstitions as citizens? Oh, you would like to take that one.
I don't want to leave this room without saying something that's missing. Education, education, education. Because when I hear everything here, it goes down to EdTech for healthcare. So if you want a future career, that's it. Because the thing is, and also when I hear abroad, I hear generalists. Who's going to join all these dots? And I think the sector is too specialist driven. They're looking at, we're all looking at our own thing, but we are not educating the policymakers. I think to Virgit's point, people are not saying anything about, because not many people understand what AI means for them. I sometimes don't. What is AI? I do AI. What does it mean? What does it mean for you, for me, depending on the hat? And I don't see any ambitious program at the moment for capacity building. So I leave it there. Sorry, thanks.
And Birgit, if you want to take that one about the biological weapon.
Yes, the biological weapon is already there, to say it in that way. We are using Facebook, you're using WhatsApp. Hello, you share a lot of data. So, and to say it's a biological weapon, yes, it can happen. But as Georg said, so we can't close out terrorists 100%. I think there is enough procedure and tech available to make data so secure as possible. But guys, think about it, how you use the World Wide Web, how you use it, and what do you share there? And if I see some Facebook groups where patients talking about their diseases and also citizens are involved, hello, there is the biological weapon already. We don't need to create a new one, we have it. Sorry to say that, but this is a question I think we have to think what we are doing before we start to talk about this and our own behavior, and this is important.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's a great kind of closing type of thing here. So I still, I want to comment a little, and I can't actually make the results public now because the tablet thing doesn't help me do that, but I will do this as I get to the laptop. But I would say that we did improve a little bit on what we as a professional community do, so they give us a little more credit here, but other things still didn't change. So we're still out there believing that we are doing average on all the fronts, which is probably good, and probably I'll also say that in terms of, the weapon and the risks that the data possesses, that's kind of the one that we need to embrace. We can't do much about this, as we just discussed here. And the only thing, and the pillar was absolutely right about that, the only thing that we can fight this, as we actually can fight all the evils out there in the world, is with education. The more educated we are, the less risk is out there. The more we are prepared to take the risk. So there's always going to be that risk. And with that, I would like to thank our esteemed panel. We've been having a great conversation here. Thank you very much.